Welcome to Master of Science with host Professor James McCanney. The good professor's career spans 50 years as a university teacher, scientist, and engineer. Each week, he will explore the rapidly changing world of science as many long-held theories are crumbling under the weight of new data. He will cover the fields of geology, archaeology, meteorology, oceanography, space science, astronomy, cosmology, biological evolution, virology, energy, mathematics, and more. So please welcome the host of Master of Science, James McCanney.
And good evening, everybody. Episode 70 in this series, Master of Science series, and about 1500 in the radio series. But let me make a quick comment, and this was regarding 3i Atlas, which has been in the news, dominated the news, especially anything related to science news, since July, since it crawled out from under a rock. And let's be clear also, it didn't get in the July 2nd discovery by Atlas. It didn't get that far without it being noticed by other systems. So that means, in my book, because these are computerized systems, they're not going to miss something racing through the sky. I mean, the computers are just not going to miss this. So it was discovered just like Hale-Bopp was discovered in 1991. The official discovery was already observed as early as 1989 by Harrington. And so it wasn't until July 15th of 1995 that Hale-Bopp was officially discovered and publicly announced, because two astronomers discovered it, exploded into brightness. But with 3i Atlas, clearly they had seen it. The people in the mill boys, let's put it that way, Tier 1 science, had clearly seen this before. And they were keeping it secret, not like it was going to affect Earth or anything else. But it's just that they have this data. I mean, it's just very clear. Okay, but the point that I want to make, and it's just, I'll maybe even say it 2 times, part of any PSYOPs like 3i Atlas, which it is, it's one of the biggest PSYOPs misinformation campaigns that I've ever seen in my life. And I would classify it now as the biggest, much bigger than Hale-Bopp, much bigger than COVID, much bigger than 9/11, and much bigger than probably many of these put together. And plus you have the AI factor now, where a lot of the content related to 3i Atlas is generated by AI, so they can produce, hundreds of videos per day that are seemingly high quality. Anyway, here is the point. A part of any PSYOPs like 3i Atlas is that it's always a smokescreen for something completely different. Let me repeat that. It is always, not sometimes, it is always a smokescreen for something that is completely different. And at this point, and being around the block and being kicked around the block quite a few times, more than I've walked around the blocks, something else is going on behind the scenes. And I can tell you international things are going on, and probably in 6 months or a year, I'll be able to tell you what that thing is. Okay, so I don't want to dwell on that too long, but it's a very important point that something else big is going on in the background and occupying the minds and attention of many, many people. And I just want to repeat also that this show is being clearly shadow banned, almost out of existence. The numbers of people that are actually being able to see this show per week, or they actually are looking at it, it might have got up to 600 or something like that. And somebody in one of the comments one week said, "Oh, that's way more than I got in my little YouTube channel." Yeah, but remember, I'm an internationally well-known scientist in the public media, I've been on Coast to Coast AM. I've been on the Renth Show. I've been on all these shows, just countless radio shows and guests going back decades and decades in the early 2000s with Alex Merklinger, and Art Bell Show back in the 90s, in the scientific community, well known internationally to the point where from Russia to China and every place in Japan, every place in between, in the science world, pretty much everybody that's got half a brain knows who I am. And I can't get more than 500 views a week. Something's going on, and that's because, as usual, this guy is right over the target, directly bomb sites right on top of it, and they don't want you, the public, to know about it. And that's why all of these fly-by-night wannabe YouTube channels that just put out complete garbage with no experience, and they're just out of the chute, with no even, they don't even have real people as authors, 500,000 views, because they're promoting, and I'll get to the point of this, I'll just say it now, but I'm going to work into this during the show. And one of the big parts of this PSYOP is that they want everybody to think that comets are dirty snowballs. And I was on a radio show the other night. I was on one of the people asked me why they wouldn't want the general public to know about my commentary. There's really a very good reason, because it hits at the core of so many things, including the fact that the people in control of the world right now, the Illuminati or whatever name you want to put on them, they realize that the public would wake up overnight and understand that these are things that they have no control over, and the public realizes that, when the public realizes that, not if, but when, that they would lose control. It's a control thing. It's simply a control thing, and they're freaked out over it. Okay. Sunspots, big families of sunspots were created by 3I Atlas when it passed on the other side of the sun, and now the sun is rotating around. The sun takes 25 days, approximately, at the equator to rotate one time. But interestingly enough, it's a differential rotation, and it's like Jupiter, only Jupiter has counter-rotating bands, and they alternate, where east-west, 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 like that. But the sun is a little bit different. It's an active fusion engine in the ionosphere, and that's a whole nother thing to talk about. But the point is that about 15 days ago, 3I Atlas was on the other side of the sun, and believe me, NASA has all of this on high resolution, high data, high resolution video, etc., of all of these activities where it's interacting with the sun, with activity with radio signatures, electrical signatures, etc. But they're hiding it all. And by the way, in a part of this show, I'll be talking about some of the comments that I've seen on the internet relative to NASA releasing these pictures a few weeks ago, which was just pathetic beyond. But it's very funny to see the public waking up that NASA was really remiss in releasing data. But you know what it does? It reinforces Avi Loeb and this craziness that it's an alien spaceship. And even this week, Avi Loeb comes out and he goes, "Oh, the things that it's doing indicate that it's a friendly alien group." A friendly alien group? And how did he determine this? It doesn't get any more bonkers than this. But NASA's reluctance or inability or whatever it is to release real data only bolsters. And that's the whole point of what they're doing. So we're seeing this three-ring circus dog and pony show. And I got to give them credit, it's really well crafted, because people are reacting to it in exactly the way they want, giving negative press to NASA, never a straight answer, promoting Avi Loeb in the idea that it's an alien spacecraft. Oh boy, the disinformation crew is working it like you know like like Chuck Berry on a guitar. Anyway, okay, so the sunspot groups, and right now, 3i Atlas is interacting with the sun on a daily basis. So we're going to get these flares that are rotating around towards Earth, and Earth is moving along in its orbit. So we're going to have the close encounter, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Also, the data has changed for the Earth's closest encounter with this comet because the comet is slowed down. But my point is that we are going to have these sunspot groups sending out flares, and some of them eventually going to catch up to us because our rotation rate around the sun is 365 and a quarter days. And the sun's rotation rate is only 25 days at the equator where the sunspots are, the sunspot groups, or it might be a few more days than that because they're not exactly at the equator. But we're going to be receiving these storms, and that's a good indicator of why we've had the great auroras recently. The auroras, and they're going to go on. We're going to have great auroras going on here for another 6 months, potentially from the activity that created in the sun with the electrical interaction of 3i Atlas with the sun. Okay, so let me go into the idea that 3i Atlas was originally spec'd to have its closest approach to the Earth on the 19th of December. And I didn't have time to go back into my early notes, but that was even supposed to be sooner than that. That was when we had the original ephemeris data for the orbit of 3i Atlas. It was even sooner than that, but it has slowed down. So then it changed to the 19th of December. And now I will tell you here that it's the 22nd of December. But in true NASA style, they're not saying anything. And of course they know. I mean, they know that this comet is slowing down. Which we saw a week ago. Last week I talked about the Uranus-Mercury connection, electrical connection that caused straight-line winds around the world in that time frame. It was last week. And it was a little bit before last week's show, which would have been the 2nd of December, where people were seeing straight-line winds. And I looked it up, and it was due to an electrical alignment with little spark plug Mercury and Uranus way out there in the solar system. It was enough to give us not equivalent of Jupiter winds, but a kind of a little brother version of it. Okay, so on the 22nd, that would be the peak time for straight-line winds due to our electrical connection with 3i Atlas, and we will connect into it. And if it were severe enough, we could even see some December hurricanes. It might be a couple of them. So that's something to keep an eye on around that. And the connection could begin as early as the 19th, actually, the electrical connection, but it's going to peak on the 22nd of December and then fade off after that. Okay. Let's see. But I think it's comical also that the people on the wannabes on the internet got their little 3i Atlas out there getting their throwing their clickbait out there, are not savvy enough, are not astute enough to understand that this comet has slowed down considerably, and its date of closest approach to Earth, which is not like a near flyby or something. Actually, the comet is heading out of the solar system, and the only reason it's our closest approach is because we are coming around in our orbit. Okay, so at any rate, just wanted to clarify those few things. And also, there's another Atlas comet out there. There's a number of them that are visible, but one of them split into 3 pieces. That's very interesting because we've seen comets split up before. The 21 pieces of Comet Schumacher-Levy 9, back in the mid-90s, what was about 1994, and coming into the backside of Jupiter, although these comets are not anywhere near a planet, they're not en route to come near planets, but comets are known to break up because it's you have to understand. Now let me talk about the shape of certain comets, like Halley's Comet was this potato shape. If you look at Comet 67P, the Rosetta mission, etc., kind of a peanut shaped, or yeah, you could say potato or peanut shaped, where it's actually smaller in the middle. And what actually has happened here is two objects have bound gravitationally and fused together basically in outer space. And this is actually a process. It's like a chemical process because in Earth's atmosphere, when things come together, they don't stick together. But in outer space, where you don't have the atmosphere, the oxidation on the materials, and you have raw metals, for example, when they come together, they actually lock together. And it's a chemical bond, not a gravitational bond when they actually touch. So you end up with something like this: two balls together, and then they start accumulating matter around that middle section, and it keeps binding up and binding up. Plus you have the electron beam coming in, which is like a welder. I don't know if you're familiar with welders, but there are electron beam welders. It's a form of welding. And so the comet actually has the same process. The discharge of the solar capacitor and the electron beam can be used, or it facilitates these materials joining together and being literally welded together. And that's why some comet nuclei have, it's like a black tar material on it. And so if you look at the series of photos, you can pull this up on the internet, of all the different comets that we visited, a lot of them have black tar-like material, and it's hydrocarbons. You can actually get the spectrum. And Halley's Comet is a good example. The surface of Halley's Comet is just this black tar. And that was rather humorous when the Giotto spacecraft, with the one with the camera that went out to visit Halley's Comet, it was the French-built spacecraft, gyro-stabilized. As it approached the nucleus, I have a little write-up in one of my books on this. It's called Fluff, Fluffier, and Fluffiest. And it's a little story about Ed Whipple. They had him there in the control room as the Giotto spacecraft was approaching the nucleus of Halley's Comet. And they were looking, and first of all, of course, they're coming through the coma of material that's attracted in towards the comet nucleus, and it was pure white. And they're coming in there, and all of a sudden they start to see the more and more defined nucleus of the comet, and they're getting closer, and all of a sudden it looks like an actual solid material, pure white. And Fred Whipple screams out on international camera, "It's the nucleus! There it is! It's the nucleus!" Believing that they're looking at the nucleus of Halley's Comet, and believing that it's a dirty snowball, or that it's a snowball, literally a white snowball, because that was their belief. And all of a sudden, the Giotto spacecraft breaks through the final layer, 5 kilometers away from the nucleus, and reveals the blackest object ever detected in the solar system. And it was pure hydrocarbons, like oil, tar, literally, heavy tar baked onto the nucleus of Halley's Comet. And there was dead silence, and the feed got cut. And actually, I was in the American Geophysical Union meeting in San Francisco with Jonathan Eberhardt and Tycho von Rosenvinge. He was one of the lead scientists on the ISWE-3 comet mission to Giacobini's Inner. And Jonathan Eberhardt was the editor, one of the editors of Science News. And we were having sushi in San Francisco as a break during the American Geophysical Union meeting. I believe it was 1986. And so Jonathan Everhart writes this article that it's still a dirty snowball, but a little dirtier than expected. In fact, a lot dirtier. And so what they believed, since this was the first real visual encounter with a comet nucleus, was that it would be, maybe that's where the dirty part of dirty snowball came from. But then they had to admit, well, it was a little dirtier than what they expected. Anyway, a little bit of history there. Okay, so let's see. Dr. Scott Jensen. Now, he's I believe he's a medical doctor, and he made an announcement this past week. This is on a whole different topic, and he's a doctor that dealt with COVID and COVID research, and he was a legitimate scientist doing research on COVID and everything else, and was one of the few people that was trying to do honest research but being blocked. And so what he's realized recently, he came out this week and said that, hey, a lot of the articles that were published in second and third rate non-peer-reviewed journals have been mysteriously gone missing. Or the term he uses is they're redacted, which is another name for missing information. Now, there's a little problem here in that a lot of the information, a lot of the publications are online. They're digital. So you don't have the paper backups to say, hey, this is what it said. And that's why I kept, throughout the decades, I've kept a lot of paper material on NASA, on, Carl Sagan, or whatever it was at the time. Because they tend to change their story, and that's one of the problems with young people today, is they don't study history. They just look at what's there today. In fact, it's a real issue. For example, I'll get into that in a minute. I'll talk about young people and their lack of knowledge of history. But anyway, back to Dr. Scott Jensen. He's talking about peer-reviewed journals, and he's, of course, in favor of peer review, something that I say myself that peer review is necessary because there is so much garbage out there that if you want to be serious, in a serious scientific sense, then you need peer review. But the problem is peer review has become a monopoly tool for very small groups of government-supported scientists. And other people cannot get a word in edgewise. So if this funding and also its prestige for the universities that house these people, it's a real, peer review is a real problem. It is a real problem. So not having peer review is a problem. Having peer review is a problem. Because what do you get? Let's take something innovative like my work, say on prime numbers, on, say, the wing generator, or, say, my comet work, or the electrical conditions in the solar system. You say you submit an article to a peer-reviewed journal with something innovative. Well, it's going to somebody who's got a vested interest in the old stuff, and it's kind of an insult to them to think that here they've been working as one of the top specialists in this field for 20, 30 years. They're considered experts in the field, and they're on the referee panel editorial board of some major peer review publication. And somebody comes along with something very innovative, or as in the case with COVID, people are coming up with different strategies, different methodologies for dealing with certain things that, or contradicting what the major remedies of the time would be. And somebody's coming in, and all of a sudden the peer review process breaks down because it is controlled. It's a control mechanism, and it's a monopoly mechanism. So peer review is good, peer review is bad. And I don't know how you cure it because you're dealing with human beings. And there's nobody more pompous, high above everybody else than people with PhDs and uh, the sitting on the editorial board of journals. When I first started publishing myself in peer-reviewed journals when I was at Cornell, that was my first attempt at myself publishing. I was on other publications with my advisor, when I was in grad school, etc. But my own doing creative research, and I was having a little trouble with the American journals. So I was at Cornell. I went up and I talked to Hans Bethe. And I was talking to him about solar physics, and he knew that there were issues with the solar model, the core fusion solar model. But anyway, I was telling him that I was convinced that the solar fusion was up in the atmosphere, and he was very interested. But anyway, as a result of conversations with him, he directed me to the European journals that were housed, they were controlled out of Denmark. And so I started submitting my articles there, and they just were amazed at my work and how it explained. The first paper was dealing with galaxies and galactic evolution. The second paper dealt with Saturn's rings and the electrical nature of the spokes in Saturn's rings and predicting those moons that were eventually found in Saturn's rings. And there was a whole laundry list of other papers dealing with comets, etc. And the editor-in-chief, Zdeněk Kopal was his name, he didn't even send them to other referees. He just put them in. He said, these articles are groundbreaking. They have to go in right away. And, of course, that was back in the day where you typed, and I had my typist there at Cornell, Marie Jones. I talked about her being the secretary in the physics and space science departments. She typed my papers and submitted them. I submitted them. They loved these articles and published them right away. But then there was the huge backlash. The astronomy, astrophysics people at Cornell, and I don't know all of whom, but there was a whole series of letters that they wrote to Kopal, the editor-in-chief, and he was editor-in-chief of many major astrophysics journals at the time, Astrophysics and Space Science, The Moon and the Planets, and a whole kind of laundry list of other ones. He was editor-in-chief. So he received all of this hate mail, basically, because I was taking NASA data and proving them incorrect and basically saying what they had published in peer-reviewed journals was false. That's the point of me talking about this. And he wrote to me. The Kopal writes to me and he says, wow. He said, you would think this is where the term axioms of astronomy comes from. He wrote to me and he said, with the axiomatic starting point that comets must be dirty snowballs, he said, you would wonder if astronomy qualifies as a science. That's what he said, editor-in-chief of a whole series of astrophysics journals. And he's commenting on, and clearly looking at my work. And he had a whole series of papers of mine that eventually never got published because they brought so much heat on him, Sagan and the boys. So at any rate, the reason I'm talking about this is because peer review assumes that once something is published, it must be true. It's been peer reviewed, right? It's been reviewed by the qualified experts in the field. Therefore, it must be true, and that's simply not the case. And now this is what Scott Jensen is, the case he's making is based on, and he's very much in favor of peer review. And there's a kind of a pecking order, too, in the peer review journals. Those that have been around for a longer time, that have more established peer review systems, that have literally more history, more badges, of honor on their list, consider that their journals are better than peer-reviewed journals that are newer and maybe stray away from standard science. It's a real mess out there. And then you have the misinformation coming from literally from Tier 1 science, that they want to maintain incorrect information because that's part of what they do. They want incorrect science being pawned off on you, the public, literally. And let me give you an example here. This is one of the most descriptive examples I can give. I was in an American Geophysical Union. It was a meeting with and you have to understand these are like constant, day after day for a week. And you're going to sessions, you pick the sessions you want to go to, and I had my own sessions where I was presenting, or poster sessions or whatever you had. And there were certain times that you had to be there and representative of your work. But other than that, you were free to go around and go to these meetings. So I'm in a meeting, and there are NASA scientists. There's probably about 20 people in the room. And there's a NASA scientist giving his results of experimentation coming from satellite data dealing with solar physics. And that was my typical specialty at my branch of expertise, although it was very wide range. It ranged all the way to Earth weather and tropospheric conditions on Earth, a whole wide range of topics. But I was in a meeting about solar physics. And so the guy gets done with his talk, and he made a comment. He said every time as part of their contract that they get with their funding through NASA that they have to write a report. And this report goes up to a place. And he referred to it as, it's basically military science, Tier 1 science. And they have to write a report and write up all of their test results, etc., and send them off to this place. And so anyway, at the end of the talk, they're taking questions, and some guy raises his hand. He says, well, what did they say to you? Did they say they liked your work? Did it pass the test? That it was correct? Did they use it? And he said, oh, they never respond to us. Huh? So here you have what most people would consider the top research scientists in the country sending their test results up to an invisible place that never responds to them. That's Tier 1 science. I've been there. I've been around the block with those people, and they're the straight shooters. They're the ones that want real answers. And the Tier 1 people have no clue that there's this whole layer of science above them of which they know literally nothing. So anyway, back to the Scott Jensen with the medical community. The medical community is the same. You have, and this is one of the bizarre things where you get international corporations that are controlled by, say, BlackRock, and they're producing vaccines that go out to the general public. Well, is that safe? Has it been tested? How about peer-reviewed journals? And peer-reviewed studies, the things like Disappear and the various types of treatments that they were using for COVID, where are the test results? Is it peer-reviewed? Was it peer-reviewed in a high-level peer-reviewed journal, or a medium or a low-grade journal that potentially has very low quality on their peer-review staff? And it's the whole issue here is that peer review has, like I say, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, because with peer review, no one can challenge the status quo. The money and prestige can dominate and crush creativity. It creates monopolies, and scientists are not honest. It's an imperfect system. Medicine, like space science, astronomy, and astrophysics, all have agendas, as do journals that are vying for attention. When after the fact falsification of data and publication starts occurring, then there is a problem. And this is what Jensen is talking about, that there is redaction of material that now could be seen as liable. People publishing articles that weren't properly reviewed in the medical community that had direct results on potentially millions of people getting sick or being handed a medicine that is faulty or designed to do harm. And so you have this, and then you have the falsification of data issue, which happens with NASA all the time. I mean, it's a giant mess, and it comes down to human honesty, comes down to funding, prestige, people's ability to get their work published and prevent other people from getting their work published. And here we are with this 3I Atlas thing. And this is the whole point of talking about Scott Jensen, discussing the issues with peer review and the destruction of previous papers that were only available online. Okay, so now we have online preprint, what they call pre-publication or preprint journals like the one at Cornell. And there's other ones out there. There's the SSRN, I think. But there's, the research news and other basically online periodicals that accept research papers as long as one can start an account and have an account there, meaning that you've verified yourself as a legitimate researcher, and therefore things can get released to the public, where then the public can have like a shot at it and see if it's valid or not, or you can get commentary, etc. But in a lot of cases, there's good work that's done there. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of complete baloney. Just people picking things out of the sky when they talk about, for example, the Big Bang. Oh my goodness, the stuff people come up with is just Looney Tune. Just absolute Looney Tune. But it gets published in these non-peer-reviewed online publication outlets. Okay, and another thing that NASA does, they always do this. I shouldn't say they do it. It's like they always do it. If they have a discovery, and this came out in the NASA press release for 3I Atlas photos, the woman says, "Oh, it had been predicted long ago that we would find these high-speed objects through the solar system." Well, what are you talking about, lady? That's craziness. Of course there could be high-speed things, but it was like NASA discovered it. And then what they do is they refer back to articles that really were not even related. They find some article that was published in 1942, before they even knew about solar wind or anything. And somebody makes some, statement that remotely talks about the topic. And they go, see, it was predicted. We predicted it. And then what they do is they skip over all the work of other people intermediate to that, and they only refer back to that article, and then they add on their own. Totally corrupt science. Totally corrupt science, because when you publish an article, you should refer to the work that was done. And a lot of the online clowns, I call them, a lot of the people that stole my electric universe idea and that type of thing, would do that too. They go, oh, well, somebody said electric back there, therefore you didn't originate electric comet concepts. Well, no, I was the person that really put the meat on the bones. And really prior to that, nobody really had a real idea of what space, how it acted, etc. I'm the one that came along and completed the whole theory. Where does the electric charging come from? Where does the fact that the sun has fusion in its atmosphere, not at the core? All of these are essential pieces of a very complex solar system model. No, nobody else ever did that before. But the clowns on the internet will try and, it's a scam. They're scammers, and that's the way they work. But they'll do the NASA thing where they'll pick something. Oh, somebody said something in 1800s or something like that. Well, yeah, they didn't even have a clue about, they didn't even know what electricity was. They didn't even know what an electron was. They saw lightning. Okay, lightning. Yeah, it's, they have, the electron and the proton were not even differentiated. The The Bohr atom was not even known. So, when people do this, it's a game they play, and it's an ugly little game, but it's done by con artists, and that's the whole point here. Once again, back to the Scott Jensen article about redacted scientific articles, where people go back and change things, and because, like I say, it's not in black and white, it's not on paper. So they go back and they change or redact or remove or add, and it's a corruption. It's another method of corruption in science. And now we're dealing with that with 3i Atlas as part of a PSYOPs. It's part of a PSYOPs program to, and like I say, what I figured out after looking and examining all of the AI videos that have come out, Nabi Loeb, and is it an alien spaceship? The one thing that they want to make sure is that everybody talks about this as a dirty snowball comet model, and that's very clear. Even anybody that gets any traction out there, that's got to be the main story that comes out of their videos or webpage or news article that gets reported or whatever it is. Icy little wanderers, make sure you say that, then you'll get attention. If not, if you're McCanny, don't expect much traction. But at any rate, okay. Young people today have no idea about history. History is something in that the number one way you destroy a culture, a civilization, a group of people, an entity, a nation, is to destroy its history. Just stop talking about it. You don't have to replace it with anything else, or you could replace it with something, completely fabricated or emotional, information, something like that. But taking real history and destroying it is the number one way to destroy a culture. And they're doing that in science. So let me just name some things here. This just came out, that there was an asteroid. NASA went out and picked up some material, brought it back. And I'm not sure if it was even NASA. It might have been Japan or the European Space Agency. I forget. But anyway, they bring this material back that they got. They snapped it off of an asteroid, bring it back to Earth, and study it. And lo and behold, they found nucleotides, organic compounds, and basic building blocks of life, what we would consider basic building blocks of DNA. So isn't that an amazing new discovery? Well, no, everybody knew this already a long time ago. The Deep Impact probe, there were two parts of the experiment, and this was decades ago, literally. One of the things that they did was to impact the comet nucleus, and just dust came out. NASA lied about seeing water come out. No water came out of the hole. There was an increase in water in the comet tail. That's because the impactor discharged the local electric field, caused an increase in the electrical discharge, and therefore more water appeared in the tail, but it did not come from the hole that was made by the impactor. But the second part of the experiment was a kind of a sponge-like screen, kind of like gel material. And it was like a big tennis racket type of thing with this gel on it, and they flew through the tail of the comet to pick up material, and they brought it back. And it fell into the desert out in the American Southwest, this little flying saucer-looking spaceship. And the parachute did not deploy, and it crashed. But they were able to go out there and recover the capsule, the scientific material that came back from this gel, and they looked at it and they analyzed it, and sure enough, there were the nucleotides. And you would think, well, they're not really big molecules. The nucleotides are the building blocks of DNA, along with potassium and other essential ingredients that are in glue in the structure of DNA. are the nucleotides, and all of them are discovered. All of them are discovered in this deep impact gel material. So this was discovered long ago, and so you find these young wannabes, and I like that term, wannabes. The people that have little YouTube channels, or these AI, I call them AI chicks because they're always a chick and lots of hand motion. You can tell it's AI because there's a lot of hand motion. But they are getting all over this because this recent discovery of nucleotides in material that came back from an asteroid. Well, no big surprise there because it was already known. And this is my point, that young people today don't know the history of science. So let's talk about some other ones. 3I Atlas is exhibiting X-rays. Well, X-rays were discovered in comets in 1995. I predicted them in 1979 as part of the work of the plasma discharge comet model. I said the one thing that'll set this model apart from the ice ball model, which was what it was called in 1979, it was called the Whipple ice ball comet model. The difference would be the discovery of X-rays with comet to the sunward side of comet nuclei. It was discovered by accident by the European Space Agency in 1995. It was listed as one of the top scientific discoveries of 1995 in Discover magazine. Go check it out. But do you think they gave me any credit for predicting it? No, they had to get the dirty snowball comet model to explain how comets could have X-rays. How an ice ball could develop X-rays. Of course it can't. It's ludicrous. Absolutely ridiculous. But my point is that young people today are going, oh, this comet has X-rays. Well, as soon as that was discovered in 1995, Comet Hale-Bopp was up in the sky, so they pointed the ROAS satellite X-ray detector up to Comet Hale-Bopp, and there it had X-rays. Then they started looking at all kinds of comets. They all had X-rays. All comets have X-rays. You just need a good detector. The ROSAT, I should have said, I mispronounced that. The ROSAT satellite, X-ray satellite, was able to detect X-rays coming from every comet. Yet today, mind you, these wannabes, little Johnny and Susie running around the internet with their new little YouTube channel, discovery of X-rays. Oh, it's amazing. How could it must be an alien spaceship. It's producing X-rays. It's once again, young people have never been taught history, let alone the history of science. Fast forward to another discovery with Comet 3I Atlas sunward spike. It's been exhibiting a sunward spike since the very first day it was publicly announced, July 2nd of 2025 this year. It had a sunward spike. And, sunward spike. It must be alien propulsion systems. It must be heavy metals coming off. You got Avi Loeb talking about the calculations he's doing, which make no sense at all because the nucleus is tumbling. How does one spot that's tumbling create this beam that's directed, by the way, exactly at the sun, which is exactly what I'm talking about in the plasma discharge comet model, this drawing right here, the electron beam coming out from the sun, which creates the X-rays, by the way, which creates the sunward spike. And the reason the 3I Atlas has a large sunward spike is because it's moving so fast. It's cutting the lines of the gradient lines of electric field much faster, and it's like the backyard bug killer, the same thing. If the bug flies in faster, it's going to be a higher discharge than if the bug flies in slowly. In fact, if the bug would fly in real slow and was a really small bug, it probably wouldn't discharge the solar capacitor or the backyard bug killer. And so that's like Earth and the other planets in circular orbits. It's still discharging the solar capacitor, but to a very little degree because it's not cutting the gradient lines of the electric field. Or very little, let's just put it that way. So once again, you got the little Johnny Susie wannabe YouTube channelers out there saying, "Oh, isn't this amazing? A sunward spike. It must be alien propulsion." You poor people out there, I feel sorry for you. If you got on the internet and you're looking for real information, you're not going to find it. It's just, it's an actual joke. Let me see. Okay, so let me take you through a bunch of explanations here. And these are rather comical, and we all love good humor. So this was an article about Three Eye Atlas, and the original comment was on X, saying that, criticizing NASA for this bogus public release where you had to wait 8 days, and NASA was on a certain date. We're going to release these photographs as it's going to be, answer all your questions. And they come out with 4 old photographs that were, the newest one was a month old, in the one from the Hubble Space Telescope that was from July. I mean, and they made this big thing, and this lady gets on there, some kind of head of NASA science. What a doorknob. I mean, do these people really, I mean, it's an insult to your intelligence. But what I find comical are the responses coming from the public. So let me pull some of these up here, and we'll go through them. And I'm doing this just for good humor. Okay, well, it turns out that I've got a number of slides here on the orbit of Three Eye Atlas, and I'm going to do those first and talk about some things that I know you're not going to see anyplace else. This first one, we've got a Mercury Three Eye Atlas connection. In other words, this would be what you call the closest approach of Mercury to Three Eye Atlas. But the interesting thing about this time, now this has happened numerous times before because Mercury's orbit is very quick, and it has many times been aligned with Three Eye Atlas. But the thing that's special about this one, this was on December 5th. If you look at the date, the lower left-hand corner, the Mercury is a perfect electrical alignment with the sun, and very definitely the 5th. That's 4 days ago. So the sunspots that are developing from this are on the far side of the sun, and it'll take a while for them to rotate around and catch up to Earth. But we could observe these interactions with the SOHO cameras and the other stereo cameras on the sun. But of course, a lot of that data is being obfuscated. But the thing about Three Eye Atlas, if you look at the little teeny short lines there that show that it's either above the ecliptic or below the ecliptic, which is Earth's orbital plane, it's exactly crossing Earth's orbital plane and that of little Mercury at this particular time, December 5th. So it's one of those times when there's a more electrical activity at that point than when it's above or below the ecliptic. Okay, so here's a better rendition of that. You can see Mercury, you can see the sun, Mercury, the oval up at the top there. Then you can see Earth off to the left side where you can actually get a view of this. But it's on the daytime side of Earth, of course. And there's Three Eye Atlas down at the bottom, and the arrows indicate the little short lines, which are the indication of the Three Eye Atlas being above or below the ecliptic plane, and it's right where there's 0. So Three Eye Atlas is crossing the ecliptic plane. This was December 5th. Okay, here now we see Earth coming around, and this particular frame is on. Okay, this frame is on the 16th of January. Now, this is going to take some explanation, and everybody's talking about this closest approach to Earth on the 19th of December. Okay, if you look at the orbit of Earth coming around, it's coming around from the left in the direction of the word Earth, so it would be, the vector would be coming out the H side of Earth. In other words, moving to the right, 3i Atlas is moving outwards in the direction of coming at you and out of the page. But the closest approach has really no significance at all, electrically. There again, NASA, if they have enough brains to know this, is either hiding it or they're stupid. You take your pick, and I just believe they're stupid, believing that the closest approach, but Earth was way over in its orbit and not electrically aligned at all. But this is the critical date here, starting at January 16th. Now see what's happening. Like the arrow shows, 3i Atlas is coming out at you, and Earth is moving around in its orbit to the right. And in a couple days, now let's move on to the next slide here. Now we see this is really, really the eye-opener, which nobody else is going to tell you about, because these are things that only with my knowledge of how these things work have come up with this orbital alignment. So this is January 22nd. This is where the fireworks will happen, because Earth, now look at this alignment. You have 3i Atlas, which is just a little teeny bit below the ecliptic plane. Not enough to make any difference because it's way out there. It aligns perfectly with Earth, the Sun. You have, now look on the other side of the Sun, you have Mercury, you have Venus, and Mars. You have the whole solar system crossing. And then we have big Jupiter out here at the lower part of the screen. We're coming into alignment with Jupiter. So we could see some serious fireworks, and I guarantee you NASA has tons of footage of these comets, of this comet interacting with Mars. NASA is such a pile of crap, I can tell you, and in a minute we'll get into some of these reactions of fans. But anyway, look at this. This is the date to remember, January 22nd. This is the date when, because we know that 3i Atlas can interact with the Sun, it's probably going to be too far away at this point to interact with the Sun directly. But with Earth in the middle, we'll probably see some significant straight line winds all the way up to potential hurricanes in the Atlantic in January. And possibly typhoons in the Pacific. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say how much this comet will still be interacting all the way into the inner solar system. But at any rate, okay, there we go. And now I'm bringing up Jupiter. This is the first electrical alignment it's going to have with Jupiter. And this is on the March 4th. So this is where the comet is going to start to interact electrically with Jupiter. So we could see once again, and look at where Earth is. Jupiter is up in the night sky, be very visible, and potentially a lot of amateurs could get good photographs of this comet interacting with Jupiter, because Jupiter has a cross solar system electrical discharge. It's starting to work in gravitationally. And then one more, let's see here, we've got another view here on the 16th of March, where it's, look at 3i Atlas over on the left-hand side where the oval is circling them. So we have Jupiter and 3i Atlas there almost touching. And my question is, could this be, could we see some significant gravitational interaction to where this comet is thrown back into some kind of orbit in the solar system? I mean, it's hard to predict because the comet is slowing down, and so the exact time of crossing is very difficult to predict, even if you had NASA's computers and all the capability and all of the mechanical expertise of engineers at NASA. It would be very hard to predict what the interaction is going to be, but it's going to be there, and it's going to be electrical, it's going to be gravitational, and so it might even be electrical interaction with the moons of Jupiter. So this is very interesting. And look at the view we have from Earth. We have a beautiful view of this in the evening sky. It'll be in the evening sky right after sunset. And oddly enough, We have some, well, I won't go into any other interactions, but these are very important dates. Okay, now I'm going to go through the comments, and like I say, I'll show you the article. This was in the IBT, something like that, IB Times. Anyway, this is a Gee Whiz article. Some guy writes it, this Denise Nequinto, on December 7th, 2025. And it says, NASA releases new 3I Atlas image captured by Hubble as observers prepare for next viewing. And so this is the picture, and it's like a fuzzy little smudge on a piece of paper. But let's go and get some of the reactions of the fans. Now, this is choice, so put on your seatbelt and let's go through some of these. Well, just want to quick read this. This is part of the article. It says, the U.S. space agency NASA has released new images of the interstellar comet 3I Atlas. This set of images provides the first clear look at the object following its close passage of the sun in late October. No, this is not a clear image at all. Sorry, honey. The imagery captured, and if you click on that imagery, by the way, it's clickable, and you come to the 4 photos that NASA has released, just garbage. It says, the imagery captured by the Hubble Space Telescope on November 30th confirms the object remains active as its journey back into deep space, while astronomers on the ground prepare for a series of viewing opportunities in mid-December. Orbital path and viewing schedule. Currently, 3I Atlas is moving away from the sun and is already hundreds of millions of kilometers away from Earth. The comet is not visible to the naked eye, but observers and scientists can take a closer look at it with telescopes in the upcoming viewing windows in mid to late December. Okay, let's see how people react to this baloney. Okay, why so blurry, somebody asks, and somebody from NASA's solar system replies, oh, lots of reasons. But in short, it's not what these spacecraft were designed to do. And watch when people come back and hammer on this. This guy is just putting himself, like putting a ball up on a tee in Little League Baseball. It says, as the Comet 3I Atlas swooped by, we jumped on the opportunity to turn on our instruments its way and see what we could get. Take HiRISE for as an example. Now remember HiRISE because one of the comments will be about HiRISE. The left what it was designed to take, and then they say, oh, it wasn't really designed for this kind of observing comets. And then they show this smudge picture that NASA is presenting. Okay, let's see some of the comments. Okay, here we go. This is from Omar. Have some shame. When amateurs take such pictures with their telescopes in their backyards and you come back to us with this shitty picture from a $40 billion cluster of instruments, the only 2 conclusions anyone can come up with is that you are either hiding something or just flat out incompetent. And then the one on the left is the amateurs. These are both pictures from amateurs. You know, backyard telescope sitting on the ground, not even in outer space. And NASA can't do any better than what they got? No. This is my favorite. I got to show you this one. This comes from Igor Mercer. It says, NASA's everything... NASA, everything's fine with 3I Atlas. It's a comet and behaves like a comet. I just love this. Just take a look at this. It's the white elephant in the room. Okay, that's great. I just think this is great. This is what the public. This is NASA. If you're watching, this is what the public thinks of you. You're a bunch of idiots. Okay, here we go. Now this one I like because it's factual. Here's this DP, Dawani NP is what it says, this woman. She says, this is an image of Earth and the Moon acquired 5 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on 3 October 2027 at a range of 142 million kilometers, which gives the HiRISE image a scale. So this is from HiRISE, the Mars orbiting satellite. And so NASA shows this fuzzy picture. And so here's a picture of Earth and the Moon. You clearly see the Earth. You can tell what it is, very detailed, 142 kilometer per pixel. And the Earth diameter, so the Earth is about 90 pixels. That's not bad. I mean, that's pretty good. That would be enough to see a major hurricane. And the moon diameter 24 pixels at a phased angle 98 degrees. So this is proving that high-rise satellite could take a much, much better photo. So anyway, that's it. That's it for tonight. Have a good week. And we'll be back next week. I don't have any interviews planned, but by the way, I kind of drew a blank when I was talking about the interview I had last week. It was actually December 4th, so check this out. It was UAP Crossfire is the name of the podcast. And we dove into some really, really interesting things, some things that I don't generally talk about on this show because they had a panel of 4 people asking me questions, and it was kind of fun because it put me on the firing line asking me questions. But check that out. And also check out the last sale of the water filter elements, jmccwaterfilters.com. Go there. There's you can use a 15% discount. Use the discount coupon code JMCC for a 15% discount, and that will end, I think it was like Christmas, that 15% discount will end. And the gravity water filter elements that you use in the Berkey style gravity filters, they're not Berkey elements, they're my own name brand, HI filter elements, the best modern technology on the planet, and they're on sale. Very, very nice sale. And then you get another 15% off. 15% off using the coupon code JMCC. And the MR5 whole house water filter, our flagship product, comes with UV sterilizer. $14.80 is the price, and get a 15% discount, includes free shipping. All of this is free shipping. And so for a Christmas present, what better Christmas present could you get somebody than a water filter, clean water, good health? And once again, the webpage, jmccwaterfilters.com. Use the coupon code JMCC for a 15% discount. Talk to you next week. Another way you can support this show is go to my Patreon channel, patreon.com/JMCCSCI, the same as the webpage, without the com, of course. Patreon.com/JMCCSCI. And join as a member. Little as $5 a month, you can help support this show, or more. People are contributing $15 up to $50 a month, and that helps pay the bills. So I appreciate that. Once again, another way to support this show, go to patreon.com/JMCCSCI. Thank you.
This has been Master of Science with host James McCanney. Join us each week as James will delve into historical figures such as Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, and the great mathematicians as we explore the history of man, Earth, and our universe as you've never seen it before. Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern,